we talked a lot of people to, and they were keen to actually, by the time we'd finished talking, to allow us to hang pieces on their rooftops during the first Grand Prix. And two of us went and measured their roofs and worked out how we could hang the pieces onto the roof so that they would be safe and able to withstand the weather, and so on and so on. And then we worked through the pieces in a big backyard in South Melbourne and achieved all these extraordinary pieces. Here we have a photograph of one of the main, the largest one, which was 13 metres by 2 metres wide on the roof of this house. Most of the houses were next to the Grand Prix. I think they were on the telly a couple of times and then they were told not to take any more photographs. And some of these have been put up ever since, right up until 2 years ago. Not all of them, not all of the 21, but about 6 or 7 have been put up on the roofs up till 2 years ago. The best aspect of utilising this theatre was the ability to use the height of it to put some of these, the rooftop art, a couple of pieces in. And again, the SAP Art group did all these, as I mentioned before, themselves. These photos are to do with all the actions that we had, and for quite some time we had them every week really. Yes, most of these photos are just aspects of all our protests that we had, of which there were very, very many. At one stage there were every week at least protesting about the trees being chopped down, about 1,000 counting small trees, but more especially large trees. Some of us climbed up and we were taken off and arrested and ended up in the wagons, whatever they call them, and locked away and taken off to the
Have you been taken away once?
Yes, I was incarcerated in a park. We were taken to court eventually, and they could find nothing against us. That we had protest meetings. We had one was in the end of the park of the lake, Albert Park area, and John Thwaites was one of the first speakers of our first meeting, public meeting about it. Of course, now he's in government, we all know that, and has done nothing to address the issues that we're fighting about still, because the current Labour government, of course, is keeping it all going and not taking much notice of all the figures and the costs, all the cigarette advertising, which is really very inappropriate actually. Yes, here we've got some pictures of the way the park was before the takeover by the corporation of the Grand Prix, and also some plan here of at the end of the state Labour government and their investment of $2 million that they were going to upgrade the theatre and tidy up the public toilets, I would think. And before that, they'd already cleaned the water of the lake, actually. And then that was taken over by the Ron Walker process. And every year during the time of the Grand Prix, for some years, we had a bus that went around the whole area with us on board and waving flags and doing things against the whole process. She's our federal member for the Democrats. The vigil, which is up to the last time we've been there 2,500 plus days that we've had the vigil in Albert Road. These are various celebrations of 1,000 days, 2,000 days, and 2,500 plus days there.
Are there casual photos?
Yes, they'd be just casual photos. Some of these things are expressing some of our activities within the group to, again, through the membership, to express feelings about the processes that have been happening to the Albert Park.
So that's a quilt?
It's a quilt that we, various members, put together as small pieces. They did at home, and then they were set up and stitched together by some of our more experienced dressmaker teams. They assembled it all together with the titles and so on. So they were kind of stand aside beside, they each gathered a piece of material and did what they felt like to express their feelings about it. Whether it's sewn or stitched together, or bits of materials, bits of ribbons. Yes, over here we have some of the developments for the flag, which we designed, coming from the art committee. We had a little competition between us, and design was used actually. So there we are. We have the flag, and then here we have the sewing up after the cut up of the pattern of for a gigantic flag of 40 by 20 metres. And these are the people making it, and then the way we used it in a few parkland places, a couple of combined other parklands protesting later on, and also in the Albert Park protest. Yes, here we can see that there are about up to 120 people holding the edge of the flag. And I think in this position was being blown, a bit of a wind raising it up, as well as the people themselves lifting it up as well from the ground. Yes.
Yeah, good.
All right, and over here we have, as we go past Godzilla, we can see that the flag's been held up the 20 metres at the top of the theatre, the ceiling, and pleated down, and just concertinaed and turned to a pattern as part of the plan of the 20 by 40 metres down onto the floor. Oh right, there's not much to explain here, but there's one of the T-shirts made from the flag design, which was a contribution to the Sun fundraising. Mm-hmm.
Of getting people interested, and we were just thrilled because there was 10,000 people who turned up.
It'll just be a brief thing on this. Yes, we thought we'd incorporate within this show some of the other parkland issues, because we've always had communication with some of them, and they've come to us for help actually and guidance on ways of dealing with the issues that they're about. And so altogether we've helped support each other in various ways. One would be Needry, the Needry quarry one, and they've had advice from us on how to go about things, as well as dealing with it in their own way. So we've carried it forward, and they've been able to win their issue mostly, except that part of the Needry quarry will be used for residential development, but most of it will stay as a kind of a water lake and sort of open parkland, I think, instead of being a toxic dump. So that's very worthwhile. Royal Park, that's been a difficult one because that's where, as we all know, the location of the 2006 Olympic Games is going to be. Pulling down a whole lot of things there, including the former psychiatric hospital. But after pressure, that's been kept. I think
that historical?
Yes, it is actually. It was built as a, but it's been kept. I think that building. So that's wonderful. It's going to be used for other purposes than a psychiatric hospital. Some sort of community services centre or something, I'm not sure. And then there are other groups, this Royal Park there, the Devil Bend, that's an interesting one. They've been fighting to keep this area, which is only 5% of Mornington Peninsula, and that was first operated by that area by Parks Victoria. It was called something else then. But there's been protest by a large amount of community there to protect it as the last 5% of natural wilderness area and water for birds and small animals.
That's the Devil Bend.
That's right, and they're still fighting on that. This is the Geelong one, which is the battle for Belmont Common, and that was a battle too, and I think that's been partly a victory. September 99, the new Brax Premier, as Premier, told the City of Greater Geelong that the water sport complex would not proceed. The Kennett government before that was proposing to create a KM Long water sports complex, and I think that was stopped by yes. Over here we have two montages. They were done early on in the fight of Save Albert Park. The first one, this one was later on to illustrate the damage done to trees as they were taken down and sacrificed in the process. And they indicate a lot of the poplars in the background, and most of them were cut down. And that's another montage, sort of illustrating the way the feelings were about the parkland before the damage to the trees and so on, to create the Grand Prix track and the space for the whole process for grandstands and corporate fencing and the big parkland damage, really.
The public was in dismay as the nature of the site has changed already. Over 1,000 trees have been felled.
The campaign to stop the Grand Prix at Albert Park Lake is far from flagging. More than 3,000 people took part in the protest today.
After a number of years of intense lobbying, the City of Melbourne finally won the rights to stage the Formula One Grand Prix motor race. This news was met by most people with mild enthusiasm or indifference. Then, in mid-1994, the bombshell. Without any public debate, the Grand Prix Supremo, Mr Bernie Ecclestone, was informed by the Victorian government that the four-day event could be held at Albert Park, a vital breathing space close to the city centre, not unlike London's own Hyde Park. Concerned citizens then watched and listened in amazement as the state's Premier, Mr Kennett, did a complete political about-face in relation to the role of government in protecting public parkland from commercial exploitation. The public's reaction was immediate, involving thousands of people of all ages and from all sides of politics, pleading to have the event moved to a less sensitive and more appropriate site. The state government quickly swung into action with a public campaign of half-truths about their intentions, even passing a special law to curb citizens' rights to complain about the plan. They refused to consider any other options and have pressed ahead with the project, an enterprise of dubious benefit to the state, but one driven by greed and big profits for a small group of influential business people. In the meantime, the public watch in dismay as the nature of this site is changed irrevocably. Over 1,000 trees have been felled, some of them predating European settlement. Purpose-built car race facilities, such as a 200-metre-long pit building, will become a permanent feature of what was once a green and tranquil recreation area. This video program documents the growing opposition to the desecration of Albert Park and demonstrates the resolve of the tens of thousands of people who have united in an attempt to convince the government and race organisers to move the Grand Prix elsewhere, and in doing so, to save Albert Park.
The protesters were warned that their presence was